feels different, and it's only Wednesday. Where does college football go from here?
Well, that's a great question, because everyone has to remember that while we're focused on the numerous disruptions this weekend, remember, everyone who is quarantined nationally has to be quarantined for 14 days, okay? I was told in the SEC, you cannot test out of this if you're a coach or a player. These are national guidelines. So you take the fact that anyone who tests positive is out for 10 days, quarantine is 14 days. How much of a snowball effect does this have, not just in the SEC, but in college football next weekend? I don't know that we have reached the pinnacle of the problem here as you compound this with the escalating coronavirus numbers throughout the country. I will tell you that on Thursday, SEC presidents and chancellors will be meeting to consider using December 19th as a makeup date for all of these games, which could provide them obviously more flexibility on the day of the SEC championship game.
Flexibility, and you mentioned December 19th, at least that weekend. You're plugged into the college football playoff. How will this week's cancellations and postponements impact the committee when it comes to a decision about the college football playoff?
Well, I spoke with CFP Executive Director Bill Hancock earlier today, and he told me that it's status quo for the selection committee. He said no one knows how many games any team will be playing. Most of us expected games to be postponed or canceled. But when you look at this, it's obviously going to be the most difficult year for the selection committee because of the unbalanced schedules. But at the end of the day, it will still come down to who did you play? And yes, fair or not, how many games did you play?
As we get ready for Week 11, still so many questions in front of us for the next 5 weeks. Heather Dinich with the latest on college football.
Still to come on SportsCenter. Much more from Augusta National. How the sound of
point differential and has allowed the most points this season. 290 points allowed, their second most through 9 games in team history. And at minus 13, the Cowboys have the worst turnover margin in the league. No other team is worse than minus 7. It is the Cowboys' third worst turnover margin through 9 games all time. But Stephen Jones had this to say in looking ahead. He said, you're changing a culture. You change when you change the leadership. You throw on top of it that we had an unprecedented environment with the virus, and Mike, meaning head coach Mike McCarthy and his staff, weren't able to have interactions with the team other than virtual. So that brings up the question. There's challenges out there, but there's a lot of other new staffs that have had the same challenges. You throw that in there, then you throw the injuries that we've had to work with, and certainly it's been a big challenge. That was in response to questions about the job security of Mike McCarthy. He's not even been there one season. We're already talking about that. So I guess I would phrase the question to you this way, Ryan Clark. If you were making the decisions in Dallas, would you look at it and say, bad luck? Bad injuries, I'm bringing everybody back next year, and we're going to make a run. That I'm just running this season essentially back with Dak and McCarthy and everybody else, and next year is going to be entirely different. Is that how you would view it? Oh, what a week this is going to be.
No, I don't believe you look at it that way. I think you can't look at it in a vacuum. You don't know what pick you'll have next year. You don't understand how contract negotiations will be, and I don't think that this coaching staff in full should come back the same way. When you look at the defensive side of the ball and what Mike Nolan has done as a defensive coordinator, they do have the pieces they expected to have. And they have been terrible throughout the season. If that doesn't improve, I believe that's something you need to look into. And obviously you don't want to give up on a coach in his first year. But, you know, we've seen it done before. We saw it done with Steve Wilkes in Arizona, and that has worked out for them. And so if you are the Dallas Cowboys, you need to look at this team from a standpoint of, if we run this thing back, how good and how competitive can we be? Or is there a way to keep the core of this team and then move some pieces around to be able to compete immediately? I think they have to look at this inside and out to figure out what's the best plan to move forward with for the Dallas Cowboys.
They have fascinating decisions to make at coach and at quarterback. Dominique, would you just run it back next year?
Nah, absolutely not. And I know that we think of Mike McCarthy as an offensive coach, but Kellen Moore is the guy who has the offense. The one thing that Mike McCarthy could really put his fingerprint on was hiring Nolan to run that defense, and that defense has been a problem. And you could say that maybe the Dak injury is a random thing that threw the season off, but that's not the problem. That defense was terrible before Dak got there, and I understand blaming the pandemic, but we all dealing with it. Like, all the teams are dealing with it. This is not a unique Dallas situation. Some teams with good coaches most likely, have figured out how to be good or at least be respectable in this situation under these circumstances. The Cowboys have not.
And what do you think, Dan Graziano? Is there any reason to believe, we hear what the Joneses are saying, is there significant reason to believe there could be a coaching change there?
No, I believe them when they he used to say about Jason Garrett, no, he's not going to be fired during the season. That was true. He wasn't. So there is reason to believe them. I admire Stephen Jones for standing by his guy and his decision, but I mean, to say culture change, I mean, culture was not the problem under Jason Garrett. It was in-game decision-making and an inability for the coaching to elevate the team on game day. So I don't know exactly what they're getting at there. They hired Mike McCarthy, and they keep Kellen Moore, as Dominique said. I'm not sure what they were trying to change, but it doesn't look like it's been a change for the better.
Well, it'll be fascinating to see where it goes. So we have one more piece of business we would like to share today, and that is that we will remind you, in case you need reminding, that today is Veterans Day. And as always, we would like to extend our most heartfelt thanks to all of those who have served in the armed forces in this nation, protecting us and giving us the freedom to sit here and talk about sports and have all the fun we do every day. And we would like to name two in particular, of whom we are particularly